Small talk feels like noise to an INFJ, a storm of words without weather. You nod, you smile, you answer politely, but deep inside, something in you quietly fades. It's not arrogance, not shyness, it's depletion. Because for you, connection isn't about exchanging facts, it's about exchanging energy. And every meaningless conversation feels like emotional static that keeps you from hearing the truth underneath. But here's the paradox. You crave connection just as much as anyone else. You long for the kind of conversations that peel back layers, the kind that make time disappear. You want to talk about purpose, patterns, pain, healing, and hope, not just how's the weather. Yet, finding someone who meets you at that depth feels almost impossible, so you retreat. You build walls made of silence and wait for someone who knows how to listen between the lines. This video isn't about introversion, it's about intensity. It's about the INFJ's struggle to survive in a world addicted to small talk, while still longing for the kind of bond that feels like coming home. If you've ever smiled through a conversation that drained your soul, this one's for you. Subscribe to Brainy for more deep dives into INFJ psychology and emotional intelligence. And tell me in the comments, do you think true connection needs words, or can silence say it all? The energetic drain of surface conversations. For the INFJ, small talk isn't harmless, it's heavy. Every meaningless exchange chips away at their energy like water eroding stone. They can smile, ask polite questions, even pretend to care about the weather or weekend plans, but behind that calm exterior, their mind is begging for something real. It's not that they dislike people, they just can't sustain conversations that skim the surface when their soul craves the ocean. Each "how are you" feels like an empty script, a ritual without emotion. And because INFJs are wired for emotional depth, they feel the emptiness of these moments more intensely than others. Their empathy doesn't turn off. It keeps scanning, searching for authenticity. But when they sense that someone's just talking to fill silence, not to connect, it becomes exhausting. They start counting seconds, nodding along, feeling their inner light dim as words pile up without meaning. The real drain comes from the split inside them, the conflict between wanting to connect and needing to protect their energy. They listen deeply, even when they're uninterested, because they can't stand to make someone feel unseen. But later, when they're alone, they pay the price. Emotional fatigue that feels like static in the mind. It's why they often vanish after social gatherings, not out of arrogance, but recovery. In truth, small talk isn't the problem, it's the lack of sincerity behind it. When a conversation carries warmth, humor, or shared curiosity, the INFJ lights up, but when it's robotic, forced, or shallow, they shut down. Their energy responds to emotional honesty, not social obligation. That's why they'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who never truly show up. To most, this sensitivity looks mysterious, even cold. But for the INFJ, it's simply survival. They protect their mind the way others protect their time. Because for them, conversation isn't about noise, it's about resonance. And when resonance is missing, silence feels like the only honest choice. Depth as the default setting. For most people, depth is a choice. For the INFJ, it's the baseline. Their mind doesn't know how to hover at the surface, it dives. When they meet someone, they don't just see what's being said, they feel what's being meant. A single sentence can trigger layers of insight, tone, expression, micro-hesitations, emotional undertones. To them, conversations aren't words, they're energy maps. And that's why surface-level talk feels like eating air, nothing to hold, nothing to digest. From a young age, INFJs noticed how people skim through life. While others laughed easily, they wondered why no one asked why we laugh at all. They observed patterns in friendships, unspoken tension in families, the subtle ways people betray themselves just to belong. Their curiosity was never casual. It was spiritual, psychological, existential, all at once. That's why they can't stand conversations that never go beyond the obvious. Their inner world is too complex to survive on empty talk. And someone meets them at that depth when they share truths, contradictions, fears. The INFJ lights up, their eyes soften, their guard lowers. In that moment, they're not just talking, they're connecting. Because that's what they live for. Those rare instances when two souls meet without pretense. They don't crave popularity or crowds, they crave authenticity that makes the noise disappear. This depth, though, comes with a cost. It alienates them. People often misinterpret their seriousness as moodiness or arrogance. But the INFJ isn't judging, they're processing. They see the bigger picture, the hidden meaning, the why behind behavior. And that can be lonely in a world that glorifies speed over sincerity. Still, they wouldn't trade it. Depth is their compass, their truth. It allows them to see beauty in pain, purpose in struggle, and light in darkness. It's what gives their empathy precision and their intuition power. While others skim the waves, the INFJ explores the ocean floor, collecting truths that most never even notice. They don't want to escape depth. They just wish someone would dive with them. Not to fix, not to impress, but simply to understand. Because for the INFJ, depth isn't drama, it's home. Empathic, bandwidth limits. INFJs don't just listen, they absorb. Every tone, every shift in emotion, every flicker of discomfort enters their system like data flooding a sensitive receiver. When they sit across from someone, they don't only hear the words, they feel the unspoken. That's why social interactions, even short ones, can feel like emotional marathons. It's not that they dislike people, it's that their empathy operates at such a high resolution that it drains them fast. An INFJ can walk into a room and instantly feel the tension before anyone speaks. They sense the anxiety behind someone's forced laugh, the sadness masked by humor, the quiet longing in someone's eyes. It's a constant decoding process, automatic and relentless. Most people don't notice this. They just see the INFJ go quiet after a while, as if retreating into themselves. But that silence isn't distance, it's recovery. They're recalibrating, sorting through everyone else's emotions to find their own again. This empathic intensity is both a gift and a burden. It allows them to heal, to comfort, to deeply understand others in ways that seem almost supernatural, but it also leaves them emotionally overdrawn. After too much interaction, even with kind people, they can feel overstimulated, not because of the conversation's content, but because of its emotional weight. Every word exchanged costs them energy, and without solitude to recharge, they begin to fade from within. People sometimes misread this retreat as coldness or detachment, but the truth is, the INFJ's heart has limits, not because it's weak, but because it's finely tuned. Like an instrument that can't play too loudly for too long without breaking a string, their empathy needs silence to stay in tune. They need moments of nothingness, no emotions, no energies, no noise, to breathe again. When they learn to honor those limits, they stop feeling guilty for pulling away. They realize that self-preservation isn't selfish, it's sacred. Because when their empathic bandwidth is full, they can't truly connect. They can only perform connection. And the INFJ was never born to perform, they were born to feel. So they protect their peace not out of apathy, but out of devotion to authenticity. Only from that stillness can they return, ready to feel deeply again, but this time without losing themselves. The discomfort of inauthentic vibes. Few things unsettle an INFJ more than inauthentic energy. They can sense it instantly, that subtle mismatch between words and tone, smiles and eyes, confidence and truth. It's like static on a spiritual frequency they can't turn off. While others might take things at face value, the INFJ feels the distortion underneath. A fake compliment, a forced laugh, a hidden agenda. It all registers in their nervous system like emotional interference. And once they feel it, there's no unfeeling it. They don't need evidence to know when something's off. Their intuition reads beneath performance. When someone says, "I'm fine," but their energy trembles, the INFJ hears the storm behind the calm. When someone flatters them for personal gain, they can feel the hollow vibration beneath the praise. It's not suspicion, it's perception. Their empathy doesn't just interpret emotions, it translates truth. And when truth is missing, connection becomes impossible. This sensitivity often leaves them feeling trapped in social spaces that demand politeness over honesty. They try to play along, to match the rhythm of small talk and professional courtesy, but their soul quietly recoils. Every forced interaction feels like acting in a play they never auditioned for. That's why INFJs often fall silent in social groups, not because they have nothing to say, but because they have nothing real to respond to. The discomfort isn't arrogance, it's alignment. The INFJ's inner world runs on emotional integrity. They crave people whose words and energy match, whose presence feels congruent, grounded, sincere. When that's missing, they feel disoriented, like trying to breathe in a room with thin air. Their empathy can't attach to something artificial. It slides off the surface, leaving them tired and uneasy. So they withdraw, not in anger, but in protection. They'd rather be alone in silence than surrounded by masks, because for the INFJ, authenticity isn't a luxury, it's oxygen. And when they finally meet someone who radiates honesty, it's like the world clicks back into focus. Their body relaxes, their mind opens, they speak freely, think deeply, and finally exhale. Inauthenticity drains them, truth revives them. That's the INFJ paradox. They'll endure polite conversations with grace, but their heart will always crave rawness, even if it's messy. Because for them, fake peace feels far worse than real tension. Craving resonance over repetition. To the INFJ, words without resonance are just echoes in an empty room. They can hold a conversation, smile, and respond with grace, but inside, they're searching for frequency. They crave that rare spark when someone's thoughts vibrate at the same depth, when the conversation feels like two minds reflecting the same truth from different angles. That's resonance, the emotional wavelength that turns ordinary dialogue into something alive. Repetition, on the other hand, feels like suffocation. The endless loops of how's work and what's new create a kind of psychological static that dulls their intuition. The INFJ thrives on original thought, on depth, perspective, stories that mean something. When every conversation becomes predictable, they start to fade into observation mode, answering with politeness while their mind quietly drifts somewhere more meaningful. Resonance doesn't have to come from deep philosophy. It can appear in humor, vulnerability, or even silence, as long as it feels real. What matters is intention. When someone speaks with authenticity, when they mean what they say, the INFJ feels it instantly. Their energy rises, their empathy awakens. They're fully present, not because the topic is grand, but because the emotion behind it is genuine. They don't want to talk more, they want to feel more. This is why INFJs often bond with so few. Their minds aren't built for mass connection. They're built for soul recognition. They want people who challenge their thinking, who listen with sincerity, who dare to be honest about their chaos instead of hiding behind polite scripts. They'd rather spend hours with one person who truly sees them than years surrounded by people who never look deeper than the surface. To outsiders, this craving for resonance can seem intense, even demanding. But for the INFJ, it's not a choice, it's a necessity. Because repetition numbs them, but resonance heals them. It recharges their spirit, reawakens their creativity, and reminds them why they still believe in connection at all. In the end, the INFJ doesn't need many conversations, just true ones. Because when words carry meaning, when silence carries trust, when two souls finally meet without masks, that's not small talk, that's home. Why silence feels safer than noise. For the INFJ, silence isn't emptiness, it's sanctuary. While most people rush to fill the quiet with words, the INFJ retreats into it like a trusted friend. Silence gives them space to think, to breathe, to return to themselves after the noise of the world. It's the one place where they don't have to translate emotions, read energy, or perform understanding. In silence, their mind stops scanning, their empathy rests, their soul exhales. Noise, on the other hand, feels like intrusion. It's not just sound, it's energy clutter. Too many voices, too many emotions, too many vibrations competing for attention. Even harmless chatter can feel like static to the INFJ's finely tuned sensitivity. They're not being dramatic, they're protecting their nervous system. Because when they're surrounded by noise, they lose touch with their inner signal, the quiet intuition that guides their every decision. Silence becomes a form of emotional armor. It's where they rebuild their sense of balance after too much external input. In that stillness, they can finally hear their own thoughts clearly, unfiltered by others' expectations or moods. They process memories, untangle feelings, and find meaning in experiences most people would rush past. To them, solitude isn't loneliness, it's emotional detox. That's why INFJs often choose silence in conversations where truth is missing. They won't argue, won't over-explain, won't fight for attention. They simply withdraw, not because they don't care, but because they care too deeply to waste energy on noise. Silence becomes their statement, more powerful than any defense. It's how they reclaim control in a world addicted to volume. And yet, silence isn't cold for them. It's healing. When shared with the right person, someone whose presence feels safe, silence becomes sacred. No words, no performance, just two energies aligned in mutual understanding. That's the kind of connection INFJs crave, the kind that doesn't need filling because it already feels full. For them, silence isn't absence, it's truth stripped of distortion. It's where clarity lives and where they remember who they are. Because while the world shouts to be heard, the INFJ listens to what the noise hides, and that's where their real strength begins. Micro moments of real connection. For the INFJ, connection doesn't arrive in grand gestures or endless conversations. It hides in micro moments, a fleeting glance of understanding, an unexpected pause in someone's voice, a shared silence where both people just get it. These are the moments that awaken something ancient in them, the feeling of being seen without having to explain. To others, they might seem insignificant, but to the INFJ, they're sacred. They are proof that even in a world addicted to noise, genuine resonance still exists. And it might happen in the middle of a random day, a stranger holding eye contact for a beat too long, a friend quietly saying, "I know what you mean," and truly meaning it. These small moments feel electric to the INFJ because they bypass words and hit straight to the soul. It's not about what's said, it's about what's felt. They crave those brief flashes of mutual awareness where the world seems to slow down, where masks slip and humanity shows through. Those moments are what keep them from losing faith in people. They remind them that connection doesn't need to be constant to be real. For the INFJ, one deep moment can mean more than a year's worth of surface interaction. That's why they often stay loyal to people who've shared even one authentic exchange. It leaves an imprint on their memory, something that lingers long after others forget. But here's the paradox. These moments are rare precisely because the INFJ refuses to force them. They can't fake interest or chase shallow comfort. They wait, sometimes for years, for the kind of bond that feels effortless, the kind that doesn't drain but replenishes. And when it comes, they hold it carefully, reverently, knowing how fragile real connection is in a world built on distraction. To the INFJ, those micro moments are emotional oxygen. They prove that despite the chaos, empathy still exists, truth still breathes, and souls still recognize each other. They don't need constant validation. They just need those seconds that make them feel understood. Because for someone who lives so much of life inside their mind, even a moment of real connection can echo for years. It's not quantity they seek, it's depth, condensed into a heartbeat of truth. Emotional risk and vulnerability fatigue. For the INFJ, vulnerability isn't weakness, it's a sacred offering. Every time they open up, they're handing someone the keys to their inner world, a place most never get to see. But over time, the act of opening becomes heavy, because too often, their honesty is met with misunderstanding, their depth mistaken for drama, their sincerity dismissed as too much. That's where the fatigue begins. Not from feeling too deeply, but from feeling alone in those depths. INFJs take emotional risks the way others take physical ones, with trembling hands but brave hearts. They'll tell the truth even when it costs them comfort. They'll show care even when it's not returned. They'll give someone the benefit of the doubt again and again until they finally realize the energy isn't coming back. That realization cuts deeper than betrayal. Because for the INFJ, every emotional risk is fueled by hope. And when that hope dies, something inside them quietly hardens. After years of emotional overextension, they start to protect their vulnerability like currency. They share less, they test energy before investing emotion. They learn that not everyone deserves access to their truth because not everyone knows how to hold it. To the outside world, this shift can look like coldness or detachment, but in reality, it's recovery. It's emotional muscle memory saying, "Never again will I give everything to someone who gives nothing in return." The fatigue doesn't just come from others' indifference, it comes from their own perfectionism in connection. They want to understand, to heal, to help, but constantly carrying emotional weight leaves them drained. So they start choosing silence, not out of bitterness, but as an act of self-preservation. They realize that protecting their peace is sometimes more courageous than proving their love. In time, the INFJ learns a balanced truth. Vulnerability should be shared, not sacrificed. Real connection doesn't require exhaustion, it requires reciprocity. When they finally find someone who meets them with the same depth, the fatigue fades. Because for the INFJ, the goal was never to stop caring, it was to find a place where caring doesn't cost them everything. The rare joy of being understood without explaining. For the INFJ, few experiences feel more sacred than being understood without translation. Most of their lives are spent explaining what they mean, softening their words, adjusting their tone, or dimming their insight so others don't misread them. They often feel like emotional interpreters in a foreign land, trying to convey feelings that others can't quite grasp. But then, once in a blue moon, it happens. Someone just gets them. No need to decode, defend, or downplay, just understanding, effortless, and pure. It's disarming at first. The INFJ isn't used to being seen so clearly. They've grown accustomed to people mistaking their calm for indifference or their kindness for weakness. But when someone recognizes the depth beneath their stillness, it feels like a shock. Gentle, but powerful. It's as if the noise of the world fades, and for a fleeting moment, they're home. That's the kind of connection that makes the INFJ's guard dissolve, because it touches something deeper than logic. It touches belonging. This rare understanding doesn't come from shared hobbies or opinions. It comes from emotional fluency. It's when someone can read their silences, sense their exhaustion, or notice the flicker of hurt they tried to hide. It's when empathy becomes instinct, not effort. For the INFJ, this is love in its truest form. Not the romantic kind, but the kind that says, you don't have to explain yourself here. Because explaining, always explaining, wears them down. It makes them feel like an outsider in every room. Their minds are too abstract, their feelings too layered, their intuition too fast for most people to keep up. So when someone simply understands, it's like oxygen after years of shallow breathing. They can finally just be unedited, unfiltered, unperformed. That's why INFJs hold tight to the people who see them like this, not because they depend on them, but because they treasure rarity. They know how uncommon it is to meet someone whose presence feels like quiet recognition, someone who speaks their emotional language fluently, without words. And in that rare space, the INFJ's soul relaxes. No masks, no adjustments, just truth meeting truth. It's not dramatic or loud, it's peace, the kind that whispers, "You're finally seen." Building selective intimacy, quality over quantity. For the INFJ, intimacy isn't measured by time or frequency, it's measured by depth. They can spend years surrounded by people and still feel utterly unseen, yet one genuine conversation with the right soul can feed them for months. That's why they've stopped chasing crowds or maintaining endless social circles. Instead, they build selective intimacy, choosing a few authentic connections that feel nourishing rather than draining. To them, one real bond is worth more than 100 shallow ones. This selectiveness isn't arrogance, it's emotional intelligence. The INFJ understands that every person they let in shapes their energy. They've learned the hard way that giving too freely only leads to depletion. So now they observe before they invest. They listen for sincerity in tone, consistency in action, alignment between words and energy. They know who's curious about their soul and who's just passing time. This awareness allows them to open up slowly, intentionally, giving access only to those who've proven they can hold it with care. For others, this boundary can be confusing. The INFJ might seem warm but distant, approachable yet private. But what most don't realize is that every layer they reveal has been earned. Their trust isn't given out of politeness, it's built through quiet observation and mutual respect. They no longer share their emotional world to be liked or understood, they share it as a sacred exchange, a meeting between souls who speak the same emotional language. And when they do find those rare people who meet them there, they give completely. Their loyalty runs deep, their care becomes intuitive, their connection unwavering. They'll remember the smallest details, sense moods before words, and stand by silently through storms. Because for the INFJ, real intimacy isn't about constant communication, it's about silent understanding, a sense of safety where both can exist without performance. In a world obsessed with being seen by many, the INFJ seeks to be known by a few. They'd rather sit in quiet truth with one person who truly gets them than fill their days with conversations that echo but never touch. Because in the end, they don't crave attention, they crave alignment. Selective intimacy isn't their defense mechanism, it's their way of ensuring that every bond they build feels like home. At the heart of it all, INFJs don't hate people, they just crave realness. They long for connection that doesn't require translation, for energy that doesn't drain, for silence that feels like safety instead of absence. They've learned that small talk may fill time, but only depth fills the soul. And so they protect their energy like art, choosing when to speak, when to listen, and when to walk away from conversations that echo but never resonate. It's not isolation, it's alignment. Because for the INFJ, connection without depth feels like starvation in disguise. They'd rather spend a night lost in thought than an hour lost in noise. And when they finally meet that rare person who listens between the lines, who feels without demanding, who speaks truth instead of comfort, that's when their walls fall and their world opens. If this spoke to you, if you've ever felt unseen in a room full of people or craved conversations that mean something, then you're not alone. You're just wired for authenticity in a world that's forgotten how to slow down. Subscribe to Brainy One for more deep dives into the INFJ mind, where silence speaks, emotion teaches, and meaning still matters. And tell me in the comments, do you crave depth over comfort, or have you learned to find truth even in small talk?